We've got big news in the Menendez trial as court is on recess till next week. One juror now off the case, and she had a whole lot today, speaking to us first as she left the courthouse, sharing some pretty juicy details from the jury room. And the fallout from Election Day. We'll debate whether or not Tuesday evening could be a major sign of things to come and a warning sign for the GOP. Also, our conversation with Martha Raddatz of ABC News. She tells us about an ambush in Iraq that killed 8 U.S. soldiers. It is a story of heroism and sacrifice just in time for Veterans Day. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French, and thank you for joining us this Thursday evening. It's been a busy Thursday indeed. Now, we begin tonight with the third full day of jury deliberations in Senator Bob Menendez's corruption trial. Once again, no verdict, and the deliberations, they won't resume till Monday. The jury, they just lost a member as she had a pre-planned vacation. But it's what she said on her way out of the courthouse that is making headlines and causing reverberations. Dominic Carter, as he has been, he is in Newark and he joins us live now. He was the first to speak with that juror, and as I teased Dominic, she certainly had a lot to share.
Richard, no doubt about it. That's an understatement. She had a lot to say tonight, and the prosecutor's case, it could very well be in trouble. It's a rare insight into that jury room, and they are not agreeing with each other. Juror number 8, Evelyn Arroyo. What was it like?
It was very stressful.
Why?
Why? Because I feel like the government was very corrupted, not that Menendez was. So what I saw is that they were, to me, railroading him.
You feel the government is trying to railroad Menendez?
Yes.
What was it like inside the jury room? Why are there no notes? Why are there no expectations of readback testimony? What were you folks doing for the last 3 days?
Well, everybody's not agreeing.
So there's trouble in the jury room?
Yes, there's trouble in the jury room.
Looking at a hung jury?
Yes, it looks like a hung jury.
Arroyo is the juror that had the long scheduled vacation to Florida and has been replaced by an alternate. Were you the only one holding out at this point?
Basically. And there's more, but I'm the one that held out that he's not guilty on every single charge.
And now, Richard, we know why the jury has been deliberating all week. Mrs. Arroyo, you're juror number 8 inside this room, and you are indicating that it was a hung jury?
Right now, it's a hung jury. Yes, it's a hung jury right now.
Wow.
They're not sure. They're still going through all documents to see if they can see if there's anything wrong. But through the whole trial, I did not fall asleep. I paid attention to everything that they showed me, and what I saw, the government didn't give me enough. So I think the defense showed me enough to say he's not guilty on every count.
And Richard, the Hillside, New Jersey resident, says she was not budging. So you were going to vote not guilty, and you were going to hold out.
And I'm going to keep it just like that. I would have went all the way to the end. If I would have been there all the way to the end, it would have been not guilty. All the way to the end, not guilty.
And so when they took the first vote, what was the vote? Was it 11-1 with you being the only one not guilty?
No, it was more not guilty.
More not guilty?
It was more not guilty.
How often did you guys vote?
Today was the second time we were voting again, but didn't get to finish. But I still hung in there with the way I felt.
And what do you think is ultimately going to happen?
I think it's going to be a hung jury.
Richard, perhaps prosecutors should count their blessings tonight, and that is because of the reason that she's headed to Florida on vacation. After listening to the case from prosecutors, as she just indicated in that interview, but she went even further, telling us that no matter what, based on the case that she heard, she was not going to budge, and she was going to vote not guilty on every single count for Menendez. So very interesting details as it relates to the case tonight from here in Newark. That is it for now. Richard, let's go back to you in the studio.
Well, first off, great job, Dominic, getting that interview. My question is for you. I'm curious because you always see the Menendez camp as they leave the courthouse. Were you under the impression that they have a little kick in their step today, or are they kicking themselves that they lost a sure acquittal with her going on vacation.
Well, the senator did thank juror number 8. He did not know that she was talking to us as he was walking out. It is right over here, Richard, where the senator leaves each and every day out of the courtroom. We knew a couple of things I want to point out to you. We were in back of the courthouse, and we were very clear and very sure to stand across the street on public property, so we were not on federal property as the marshals, the federal marshals, escorted the jury out. We were very particular, very careful not to shoot the faces of any juror members because they were all there. They got onto the bus before we did the interview. She stopped, Richard, and specifically waited for Richard French Live. She wanted to talk to us. She was very clear. So the other jurors left, escorted by federal marshals on the bus, and she stayed and waited for us. And has become customary in this trial, some of the reporters have started literally following us as we've been coming up with good information. So there happened to be 1 or 2 print reporters that followed us as we went to interview her, and they were able to listen in on the interview as well. But she had a lot to say tonight, Richard.
And that interview you had has been widely picked up. And my question is, Dominic, and I guess it's a little inside baseball operational, but how did the judge not put a gag order on this juror? You have an active trial. I know she's dismissed. I know she's clear. But they even addressed that with you. They said that she can talk as long as you don't show the other jurors. It shocks me.
Well, Richard, she has a First Amendment right, just like everyone else does, to state exactly what their point of view is. We, again, were very clear not to go near any active member of this jury. They were escorted by federal marshals as they were walking out. So all Federal Judge William Walz can do is thank her for her service, which he did, and then she is done. We just happened to be waiting for her. We had planned this all day long to talk to her, and she happened to come out, and we happened to be at the right location where she was. And Richard, if we wanted to talk to her for another 15 minutes, she would have done so. That's how adamant she was. So I want to go back to your original question, Richard. If you're Menendez, yes, his lawyers, Abby Lowe and team, they're kicking themselves. Your hung jury just went out the window when this woman went on vacation. She says she was not going to budge. If you're a prosecutor in this case, you're wiping your head because it's like, whoo. But Richard, what we're seeing here tonight, and you've talked about this on the air some, and I didn't make the connection until tonight. Menendez is very popular in New Jersey. This, as a sitting senator, this is a trial of his peers, and these jury members, they read the newspapers prior to the case. They know what's going on. He's very popular. Now, keep in mind, Richard, she says not just herself, her exact words, 3 or 4 members on the jury that are voting for acquittal. So the feds may have a big problem on their hands tonight.
Well, I always have a big problem when I have Richard Brodsky in the studio, Dominic, as you know, and of course, he can't contain himself. He's got a question for you, Richard.
Hey, Dominic, you spent a lot of time telling us how you weren't on federal land, that you didn't shoot. Are you in any danger of breaking the law there?
No. But Richard, Mr. Brodsky, as I say, I just want to be clear because we're talking about a federal trial, and you don't want to interfere with a federal jury. And right behind the courthouse, Mr. Brodsky, is also federal property. So we're not allowed to be right on the federal property in the back. The only place we can be is right out here in the front.
I always tell you what I tell you every Thursday. Don't take the bait and even answer them, okay? Anyway, don't take the bait and ignore them. Great job, Dominic. Of course, he'll have more on Monday. He'll be back here in studio tomorrow. Okay, Dominic, check in later. All right, let me bring in the panel. The aforementioned Mr. Brodsky, professional troublemaker, but also former Democratic New York State Assemblyman from Westchester, professor at NYU, those lucky students. Scott Vanderhoff, former 5-term Republican Rockland County executive and co-chairman of the Palisades Institute over at Dominican College, an attorney like Richard in his own right, and Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent yes, and not an attorney, nor do you play one on TV. Okay, and to be clear, you know, there was a conversation, in fact, where the marshals came over to Dominic and said, you're more than welcome to talk to the said juror if she wants to talk to you. Just make sure you don't show any of the remaining jurors that, of course, will begin deliberations with now that alternate juror come Monday, where they're going to start them all over again. Okay, on a serious front, yes, obviously if the prosecution here, you would have liked that juror to stick around after what you just heard today, but they're in real trouble. If there's 3 or 4 more in the jury room, and I got to think this thing could be ripe for appeal potentially, even if somehow they come to a conviction, which looks unlikely at best.
Yeah, I mean, as you probably know, the longer this jury deliberates, the less likely the prosecution looks like it's going to win.
Yep.
And obviously we're hearing that here. And it's very interesting, though, because the adamancy of how the prosecution, the government is picking on him. I mean, somehow they didn't present this very well. If a juror walks out feeling as if the defendant has been picked on that way, so I would say
he did nothing wrong. She went even into more clear detail that on every single charge she would have voted for acquittal, and more than that, the bad guy, like you say, with the black hat here, it's the government.
Yeah, and that's the prosecution apparently, and I haven't been close to it like Dominic has, but that's a very bad sign. That means, those 3 or 4, if that's how many there are, they have reason to believe that this was not presented in a way that was helpful to the prosecution.
And Andrew, remind everybody, obviously we're talking about this as a criminal case here, but there were political implications and are political implications for those who didn't follow. Obviously, you have a sitting senator on trial, but it's about math, too, in Washington.
Yeah, if he's convicted, there will be a lot of pressure on Menendez to resign his position. If he does that, and Chris Christie is still the governor of New Jersey before Phil Murphy is sworn in on January 16th, then Christie gets to appoint a successor, at least until a special election is called. So there would, be another Republican in the Senate, increasing their numbers to 53 and making it easier to pass Trump's agenda. There will also be a push for a vote in the Senate. They can vote to expel him, but that would need 66 votes, 2/3 of the body, and there probably wouldn't be enough votes for that. That would also increase the pressure on Democrats. Hey, you've got a corrupt senator or somebody who's been convicted, and that could theoretically lead to a hangover.
But as long as the Democrats were willing to hold out until January, and now with the elections behind them, which certainly seems foreseeable here.
Sure.
And you've got precedent, too, other lawmakers who've held on.
Including from New Jersey.
Exactly, including from New Jersey. Listen, Barrister, it don't look good for the prosecution.
Well, you got to go careful, because when if her numbers, we take her numbers seriously, there probably were like 5 for conviction, 3 or 4 for acquittal, and a bunch of people in the middle. That yields a dynamic sometimes in which you get what's called a compromise verdict, where they say, all right, we won't convict him on the big stuff, but he did some wrong, we'll convict him on 1 charge. Now, I don't have any information that that's going to happen, but this was in a bizarre way, this is bad for the defense that she's off the jury.
Oh, clearly. And you had you acquittal across the board if she stayed.
And no, or a hung jury across the board. Whether or not other people feel as strongly as she does is an issue. And then you get to this awful question of whether you retry him.
Well, to me, here's the question. If she's to be believed, and I have no reason to say she's not, you clearly know that if not for a vacation, he would have been acquitted. She also says definitively that at least 3 to 4 other jurors feel the same exact way. I understand the argument why, hey, this was scheduled, this was planned, she was going to be replaced, and there's another juror that's already prepared, that heard the entire trial, all the testimony, and now will join the room for deliberation starting Monday. But if you're the defense, I got to think you got an argument here for acquittal. Or not acquittal, excuse me, for that you got a retrial, or certainly an appeal.
I would think. See, what strikes me is the way she came across. This is a woman who was pent up, frustrated, angry at the other jurors in some respects, at least if you can read into this. And that tells me that this has been argued, to Richard's point, back and forth pretty heavily, which leads me to believe that people aren't going to change that rapidly.
She didn't seem alone either.
No.
I know we're tight on time. I'm a little surprised it's only 3 or 4. I mean, given the difficulty we've heard in charging on these corruption cases and how high the bar is for corruption after McDonnell, I would have thought there would have been more jurors who were leaning towards acquittal, or just that the government had to prove its case. That surprised me that the number was as low as it was.
And so again, everyone, come Monday, deliberations begin all over again. Dominic, you'll be here tomorrow. They'll talk more about the trial, but Monday, of course, we'll be back in Newark for it. But as Prupahara said, stay tuned. All right, coming up next, the Trump effect. How Democratic victories in local races in our region could give us a hint possibly where the country is headed, and how the next elections come November could shake out. Could we be looking at a wave?